Hello, this is Archie Dunlop with Talking Astrology with Archie on Monday, June the 3rd, 2023. Today I want to talk a little bit about Nigel Farage. I'm assuming you have heard of him. I mean, even if you're not British, I mean, after all, he is a good friend of Donald Trump. But if you haven't heard of him, he is a British personality, former politician, and his big thing is his opposition to Britain's membership of the European Union, and he played a big role in the Brexit referendum, which saw in 2016, which saw Britain leave the European Union. So anyway, today I want to talk about his horoscope, and the reason I want to talk about his horoscope is that there has been some news about his bank account. So let me just show you what I'm talking about. This is from Sky News, and the article's headlined, Nigel Farage claims his bank accounts have been closed without explanation. The former UKIP leader, that's the United Kingdom Independence Party, made the claims in a 6-minute video posted on social media in which he suggested he was being targeted because the corporate world had not forgiven him for Brexit. There's Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage has claimed that his bank accounts have been closed without explanation. The former UKIP leader, 59, said he had been with the prestigious banking group, which he did not name, for more than 40 years. In other words, for his whole adult life and perhaps more. However, he said he had received a letter from a bank to tell him his personal and business accounts were being closed. He claimed that the bank had given no explanation in the letter as to the reason behind the closures, but that he had since been told over the phone that the move was a commercial decision. In a 6-minute video posted on Twitter, Mr. Farage, the former Brexit Party leader, said that losing his bank account was the equivalent of being a non-person, and that the decision may fundamentally, as he says, fundamentally affect my future career and whether I can even go on living here in this country. So that's the picture, and I'm going to talk about this later, and I'm going to tie in with Pluto. He got this letter 2 months ago when Pluto was in Aquarius. It's now back in Capricorn, and I think Pluto is relevant to this situation. I've talked before about what Pluto in Capricorn and Aquarius might mean, and government control. Capricorn is a sign we associate with the banks. So I think this is interesting, and I think it's also very concerning. But before I talk about Nigel Farage any further, I want to look at what's happening today, what's happening astrologically today on Monday, June the 3rd, 2023. So here's a chart for today, and you will see that today is a full moon, July the 3rd, 2023. I've already covered the full moon in a separate video, and in this separate video I was seeing the full moon as something which kind of lasted for a fortnight, from the full moon to the new moon. But now I'm just talking about the full moon as one of the astrological events happening today, which will colour what Monday is like. So here we have the moon in Capricorn, opposition the sun. Moon in Capricorn, it doesn't work too well in this sign. The moon is, Cancer is the sign that the moon rules. So the opposite sign, Capricorn, means that the moon is in its detriment in Capricorn. Probably because the moon is an emotional sign, supposed to be very sensitive, and responds to subtle emotional signals and all this kind of stuff. Yet Capricorn is very materialistic. It's focused on, what our material needs are, money, and it's just not very fuzzy, Moon in Capricorn, not very emotional. So Moon in Capricorn can be quite harsh and self-interested. So we might notice this when we look at how people are responding to us and responding to each other. Yeah, it's not really that bad, because the moon, although it's in Capricorn, is making a trine aspect to Jupiter. And you'll particularly feel this if you're in Europe. In United States, it may be a little different. The effect of a moon trine Jupiter over the day may be not quite as strong, but I think we're all going to feel it wherever we are. So with Moon in Capricorn trine Jupiter in Taurus, it's fortunate. It's about being lucky. It's about being able to express ourselves. And I suppose with Moon in Capricorn, when in terms of money, when it's trine Jupiter in Taurus is actually quite a financial orientated sign. That could mean that it is a good time for making money, or for negotiating money, or for talking about money, or working out how we can make more money. So yeah, I mean, I know it's being materialistic gets a bad rap, but if you want to be materialistic, if you want to focus on improving your income and financial prospects, then yeah, go ahead. I think it can be a good day. At the same time, it is a full moon. Full moons, all things being equal, full moons are not particularly fortunate. There's a lot of stress around with a full moon, because the moon and the sun are opposition each other. Difficult to express our feelings in a coherent way, although that Jupiter that I've just been talking about is going to make it easier to express ourselves. Moon is also its opposition Mercury. So the moon is actually a communication planet, and so is Mercury. The moon is more about sort of emotional communication. Mercury is more about mental communication. And so there may be a certain communication mismatch. We may say things too quickly. We may say things that, the first things we feel. We have a feeling, and then we talk about it. Maybe that's not the right idea. When we're communicating, we need to be rational, and we shouldn't allow feelings to get in the way. And one other thing, all of us are selfish, let's face it. All of us put our own interests first, or most of us. But we have this act where we try to, keep our selfishness to ourselves. We try to show that we are thinking about the wider world. We are caring in terms of other people. But it might be very easy to say something which demonstrates that we really are being selfish and are only thinking about ourselves. So if you see a situation where you feel you need to speak up for your own financial interests, or the interests of your family over another family, or your business over another family, your business over another business, be careful. Because if you say the wrong words, you just could come over as being a selfish bastard. And I don't think that's the impression you want to give. Or indeed, we all want to give. We're all selfish bastards at some level, aren't we? But we want to kind of keep that secret. So, not secret, but, we have to think about society's norms. At the same time, Venus, the planet of relationships, is making a square to Uranus. Relationships may not quite go to plan. We might have things planned, and those plans could be disrupted. People might not respond in the way we think we're going to respond. And, as I said when I was talking about the full moon, there is a positive side to this, that we might have sudden, unexpected meetings. But anything to do with relationships, whether it's love, business, friendship, whatever, there's a certain sense of instability. But maybe it's excitement as well. So, it's not necessarily too bad. Also, when I was talking about the full moon in a separate video, I mentioned Mars is on the Sun-Moon midpoint, or rather, Mars is making a 45-degree aspect of the Sun-Moon midpoint. So today, I think it's going to be an ambient level, an ambient aggression. The atmosphere is aggressive, or has the potential to be aggressive, and if we behave in the wrong way, even in a very slight kind of way, we might find that other people respond to us. They start criticizing us, start arguing with us. Hopefully that doesn't mean start fighting us, but just be careful. Just however peaceful things look on the surface, there is underneath that surface a potential for aggression. And you know what? Some of us might take the view that it's actually better to stay out of other people's way. I mean, Jupiter is conjunct the Sun-Saturn midpoint, and that may indicate a preference for being alone. Saturn can be quite a lonely planet. Sun, Saturn together, keeping ourselves and the way we express ourselves private. And then you put Jupiter in, it means like perhaps being able to benefit from being alone, or at least alone in terms of perhaps our family and our close friends, and not getting involved with people outside our immediate circle. So I know that, being alone, solitude gets a bad press, but today that might well be the right approach. So as far as my forecasts for the 12 signs are concerned, as always, I've done them. So these are my star sign forecasts for today, which is Monday, July the 3rd, 2023. Aries, you have a strong presence and you understand the fault lines in your immediate environment. There is scope for making extra money, particularly if you're going into work. Taurus, of all possible scenarios, you believe the best scenario can happen. Your optimism has a basis in reality, so don't let unreasonable worries spoil the magic. Gemini, you're feeling tense. It's clear that something has to happen, but working out the timing is almost impossible. Try to respect other people's boundaries and perhaps their need for solitude. Cancer, there is a full moon and it really does feel that things are changing. Your view of the world is unique and very often it can't be shared. Relationships have to move one way or another. Leo, something is happening under the surface which you don't fully understand. You can't guess, you can't ask questions, you can only sit and watch. The truth will eventually emerge. Virgo, Jupiter's benign influence mitigates the full moon's negativity. And as the emotions flow, Virgos become happier. Don't allow yourself to obsess about single issues for longer than you have to. Libra, Venus, your ruler, is making a stressful aspect to Uranus. Things can happen which you simply haven't planned for. An unexpected meeting, stupid behaviour, or an expensive out of the blue expense could just happen. Sorry, I've completely messed that one up. Let me rephrase that. Libra, Venus, your ruler, is making a stressful aspect to Uranus. things can happen which you simply haven't planned for. An unexpected meeting, or someone's stupid behaviour, or an expense from nowhere could hit you really hard. So be prepared. Scorpio, don't underestimate your influence. Today you have real power and you can leverage the full moon's dynamic tension to further your core interests. But don't be selfish for the sake of it. Sagittarius, what do you need to have a good day? I doubt very much that you need friends and admirers. Just a straightforward environment that's free of emotional complications. Capricorn, today's full moon reminds you that partnerships are never easy, that everything has to be negotiated, and perhaps you realize that some things are coming to an end. Aquarius, there's a chore that you don't want to do, but if you leave it much longer, a small inconvenience could become a large problem. Partners are stubborn. Pisces, it's a day for seeking out wisdom, and it can be found in the strangest of places. So be extra tolerant and listen carefully to the message, even if you don't trust the messenger. So let's now move on to the I Ching, and as always, I threw the coins in the air and I asked the question, what is Monday going to be like for visitors to my YouTube channel? So the first hexagram I threw was keeping still. This is advising us today, really in the first instance, to do nothing. There's nothing really that has to be done. Just keep quiet. Don't let our ego get in the way. Just be composed, and don't be tempted to put your head above the parapet, because that might create trouble. And be particularly careful when it comes to talking. We're going to want to say stuff. Keeping still can be hard work, and if we say stuff, we could spoil everything, because we would be revealing our true intentions. People might see us for what we are, and as soon as we start talking, we're going to perhaps feel the need to start boasting, talking about ourselves, and that's going to arouse suspicion. So I would suggest that we just keep quiet. Now, this keeping still hexagram changes to another hexagram that also relates to kind of keeping still, but not really in such a positive way. And this hexagram that it moves to is standstill. This means really that things are not happening. It's not just that we should be keeping still. It means that there is actually nothing that can be done that is constructive. Worse, it seems that the forces of evil, if you like, that sounds a bit dramatic, are gaining ground, and so if we move in this situation, we're just fueling the problem. And there's further advice here that we must be careful, for example, where we get our money from. We don't want to put ourselves in the service of bad people, because bad people, and we're working for bad people, that's just not a good idea. So there's a certain sort of moral issue there. I'm not quite sure how that is going to work in practice. Maybe, I suppose, if you're self-employed, you might get a job or an offer of some work, and in fact, if you were to take this offer, take the money, you might be doing something that is really completely immoral. Of course, if you're in the United States, Independence Day is tomorrow, so hopefully, there won't be much work because people will be relaxed for the holiday. I don't quite know how it works. Even though I've been here some time, I'm still get confused about Americans' attitudes to these things. But yeah, so think carefully. If someone offers you money, ask yourself whether it's morally the right thing to do. But I don't want to exaggerate this. This I Ching reading is just for today. Tomorrow really is a new day. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to look at Nigel Farage's horoscope. So, if you're not interested in Nigel Farage's horoscope, then perhaps consider it as an example. He is also a friend of Donald Trump, and he does represent the kind of populism that we've seen in Europe and America, certainly since 2016. So, and his chart is really very interesting. What is interesting about Farage's chart, if you look at it, is firstly, he has got no air in his chart. He's got nothing in Gemini, nothing in Libra, and nothing in Aquarius. Now, on first sight, you might find that interesting because one of the images that certainly people in the UK have of Farage is that when he was a member of the European Parliament, he would give these speeches, these really attacking speeches where he would really pile into the European Union, and they were very effective. You can certainly, if you look up Nigel Farage European Union on YouTube, you can see examples of his speeches. He was really really very effective. So superficially you might think, well, where's the air? Air signs are about communication, aren't they? Well, you have to think about what his speeches were about. He wasn't sort of putting forward an argument, believing something is true. He was telling it as he saw it. There is a difference between believing something and knowing something. Carl Jung was a Leo, and he was asked whether he believed in God, and he said he doesn't believe in God. He knows God exists, and so you see Farage with all his fire. He's got Jupiter in Aries, Sun in Aries, Mars in Aries, Moon in Sagittarius. These are all fire signs. 4 of his traditional planets are in fire signs. He doesn't believe that the European Union is a bad thing. He knows it's a bad thing. Being a fire person, he is able to express himself in a way that is exciting. I know some people can't stand Nigel Farage, but that's not the point. Fire is interesting. It's compelling. If you just give a speech where it's all arguments and facts, okay, he's good on. He knows his facts. He's got Virgo rising. But if you try to explain something, people are just going to turn off. But he just tells it as it is, as how Aries, Moon in Sagittarius. Moon in Sagittarius just is completely honest. He doesn't care who he offends. And so that Moon in Sagittarius, you can see Moon in Sagittarius is trine Jupiter in Aries. That is great for a compelling orator. When you see him on TV, I think he has a spot on GB News. Yeah, was he on LBC? I think he, I don't think he is anymore. But he's He's interesting, particularly if you believe if well, probably you have to believe in what he says. Um, but if his message appeals to you, then you perhaps can't get enough of him. Um, so yeah, that fire works incredibly well, and he just has this knowledge that he's right, and Moon and Sagittarius, he tells it as it is. And people who tell it as it is, there's someone else who's got their Moon in Sagittarius. Yeah, Donald Trump, he has Moon in Sagittarius, like Nigel Farage. And, both of them, both men, they say things, and they don't really care who they offend. And ordinary people who aren't obsessed about political correctness, we like that. It's popular when people says it as it is like Donald Trump, like Nigel Farage. We like that. It gets votes. It gets support. And so I think that is a very important feature of his chart. Notice also he's got a Uranus-Pluto conjunction on the ascendant. Uranus-Pluto is able to stir things up. Uranus is the rebel, the revolutionary perhaps. Pluto wants to transform everything it touches. Pluto rising. Now, you might also notice that he's got Mercury and Venus in Taurus. Mercury in Taurus, for people who argue professionally, say for example lawyers, if you're in England it would be barristers. Having Mercury in Taurus is really quite useful, because Mercury is a sign of communication, but Taurus is very solid and grounded. It can present the facts in an orderly fashion and build up the case and win the argument. But I should emphasize he doesn't win the argument by just through the facts, because he's not an air sign. He doesn't have anything in air. He fundamentally wins the argument through that compelling knowledge. And I think you could argue that Nigel Farage is in some way tuned into something. He taps into maybe the collective unconscious through that fire. He's not just if when water attempts to tap into the collective unconscious, it just watches what people are saying. He kind of follows the crowd, follows the crowd's feelings. Like Elon Musk, watery person. He's not a fire person. He just follows the trend. But if you're a fire person, it's a creative element. It creates the trend. It taps into the universe. It knows which way the trend is going and is able to really push that forward. And I think to a great extent, that's what Nigel Farage has been doing. Although we have to be careful in terms of saying he's a revolutionary, because his critics on the left would just say, well, actually, he's just a conservative. He just stands for the interests of business and so forth, or a particular aspect of the business world. Mercury and Venus in Taurus. Taurus is a conservative sign. So yes, there is a conservatism there, but that I don't think that changes the fact that he is able to be a revolutionary. In terms of conservatism, also you'll notice he's got the North Node in Cancer. Cancer is about the nation. It's a very clannish sign, and so national self-interest. That's Cancer. Cancer is also about traditional values. and Farage is really he's, I think, a supporter of traditional values, or at the very least, he is a great critic of woke values, and that would make sense with his North Node in Cancer. Now, as far as what's going on now with his bank accounts, I made a video about Pluto in Capricorn and Aquarius, and I put forward the argument that when Pluto went into Capricorn, was it 2007, 2008, around then, Pluto was essentially going through a Saturn-ruled sign, Capricorn, very much associated with governments and banks. Then Pluto goes into Aquarius, which is yet another Capricorn-ruled sign. And, sorry, what did I say? Aquarius is another Saturn-ruled sign. So, we've got this whole period, 2007, 2008, to, I think, 2043, as Pluto goes through first Capricorn, then Aquarius. And this is about governments trying to control our lives. And as Saturn moves from Capricorn into Aquarius, it's about active control. We've heard about central bank digital currencies, where governments can potentially just focus, can just monitor our expenditure. If we have central bank digital currencies, they can actually stop us spending money on particular things. They can freeze our they can freeze our money. They can freeze our assets potentially through central bank digital currencies. So we've got this great sense of control. And Nigel Farage is kind of picking up on that. He's finding that his bank account, he has to move his bank account, and he's tried to find other banks to give him an account, and they've refused. This is, I don't know, I think this is Pluto in Aquarius, and this happened 2 months ago when the Pluto was in Aquarius, and so he is really picking up on this, the fact that if you can control people's expenditure and how they lead their lives, then you're able to control society, and you certainly want to knock out people like Nigel Farage, who are a threat to the status quo. So not so long ago I didn't believe in conspiracy theories, but this story with Nigel Farage suggests to me that we're quite justified in being worried, and this may be the shape of things to come. In January, Pluto goes into Aquarius. It actually goes back into Capricorn yet again after that, but the Pluto in Aquarius is really on us now, and once it really starts establishing itself in Aquarius over the next few years, we're going to see more and more attempts by government and business. Don't forget business and government. They're very often hand in hand with each other. More and more attempts to control us. Now, what about Nigel Farage? I think he was talking about leaving the country. Is this the end for Nigel Farage? Well, I can see from his chart that he is having a bad time, perhaps, at the moment. Saturn is at the moment is at about 6 Pisces. So here Nigel Farage has his Saturn at 1 Pisces. So recently he's had his second Saturn return that we have in our late 50s. So he's had Saturn opposition his Uranus. Farage the rebel, perhaps Uranus in Virgo, is being undermined by Saturn opposition, by transiting Saturn opposition that Aquarius. So Saturn is certainly causing him problems there. And if you look at his Indian chart, we know we'll see further things going on. Notice also though that Pluto, when it moved back into Capricorn, made a trine aspect to his Venus. So maybe this bank thing isn't necessarily such a bad thing, because he's able to publicize it and it's able to put him back in the public eye. Remember that Venus, if you look at his chart, he's got Venus pretty close to the midheaven. So there is a sort of career leadership feel to that Venus. So with Pluto trine that Venus, he's able to use the bank accounts to put himself back in the limelight. Now, as far as his Indian horoscope is concerned, I think it's important to look at Nigel Farage's Indian horoscope. Reason being because the Indian horoscope gives some idea about the big phases in life. You have political leadership, like with Margaret Thatcher. She was going through a period of her life from the early 70s through to 1990, I think this solid period of life, and really nothing could stop her while this period of life was continuing. But as soon as this period ended, and you could see it in her Vedic chart, that was it. Her political career was over. So let's look at Nigel Farage's Vedic chart. So we can see on the right here, I'm not sure if you can make it out, but these are the major periods of his life. And we all go through 9 major periods, assuming we live to 120. And these major periods can last a long time. His Rahu major period started in August 2012, and it continues until August 2030. So that's 18 years. Same length of period, when Margaret Thatcher was in her Rahu Dasha. That lasted from 1972 to 1990. So we've got some precedent there for saying that once someone is in a period, their luck continues, on and off. So what happened to Nigel Farage in 2012? Well, I don't know precisely what happened in 2012, but fairly soon after the beginning of his Rahu Mahadasha, he had some major electoral success, because in May 2013 there were local elections in the UK, and Nigel Farage's party, the United Kingdom Independence Party, got 22% of the vote. And we can continue this. I mean, this is aside from any successes he had at the European level. In the 2015 general election, even though the United Kingdom Independence Party, I think did they get 1 seat or 0 seats? They may have got 1 seat. Now, they did very badly in terms of actually getting members of parliament, but in the 2015 general election, the United Kingdom Independence Party got 12.6% of the vote. And as a result, the Conservative Party, who won the 2015 election, got worried. They wanted to, protect themselves from UKIP. They saw UKIP as having the potential to take away votes. So what did the Conservative Party do? They thought the best way to deal with the problem was to have a referendum on Britain remaining in the European Union. They expected the British people to vote to stay in the European Union, and then that would be the end of UKIP. I suppose that was their hope. As it happened in the referendum in 2016, Britain voted to leave the European Union, and that's why Britain is no longer in the European Union. Now, this Rahu period lasting from 2012 to 2030, is fortunate. Reason being because Rahu in his Indian horoscope is in Gemini, and Rahu is exalted in Gemini. Further, Rahu is in the 11th house, and Rahu works very well in the 11th house. So, in a way, you could argue that Farage is going to be on and off unstoppable until 2030. Now, as far as the bank problems are concerned, which seems to be impacting Farage's personal life. I think he can't open a business account and so forth. It's making it very difficult for him to operate. We notice that in the middle of his Rahu period, these periods are all divided up into 9 sub periods, and in the Rahu sub period, the North Node period, divided up into 9 sub periods, and the middle period is ruled by the South Node. So in a jargon, Rahu major period, Ketu sub period. And we can see this play out when we again, not sure if you can read this, but from February 2023 to February 2024, he's in a period which is really up and down. It's probably quite difficult to manage. People might feel that maybe this is the end as far as his political career is concerned, but it only lasts a year. In the beginning of 2024, he moves from the Ketu sub-period to his Venus sub-period. And Venus is in his 10th house. 10th house in astrology is connected with leadership and success. And it's in Taurus, in its own sign. And further, according to the strength system that is used in Indian astrology, Venus is actually one of the strongest planets. Is one of the strongest planets in his chart. So, looking at his Indian chart, I'm thinking that from early 2024 onwards, and particularly from 25, as he moves into 2025, he's going to be on good form again. So anyone who thinks that this is the end of Nigel Farage, I think really does need to reconsider. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about the subject of Nigel Farage. I hope you found it interesting, even if you've never heard of him before. And I really do think that we're going to be hearing a lot more about him. And he's not over. He's got more to do. In Britain, the reputation of politicians is nosediving, and Nigel Farage is not in government. He's not a member of parliament. He's not really doing anything to sully his reputation, so he's kind of in reserve. And I think that 2024, 2025, we're going to see a lot more of Nigel Farage, and I don't know quite what he's going to be able to do politically, how he's going to be able to make his influence felt. Maybe he's going to be able to do it from the sidelines like he's done before. But yeah, don't write off Nigel Farage. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say for today, and I will talk to you tomorrow.